Today's discussion is specifically about age verification, and the reason it's so topical, especially in the UK, is that businesses in the UK are required by the regulator, ATVOD, to age verify customers before they can see that content. That raises all sorts of issues, like, how do I do it? Why should I do it? And, can this work in a world where only British companies have to comply to this rule? This rule doesn't apply at the moment in Europe or the United States. And is that outlook going to change? Is this rule going to become an internet standard in some way and spread and affect businesses from outside the UK? So I think this session is particularly relevant to you, those of you in the UK, but it's also very relevant to those of you outside, because it's going to affect you immediately. If you have a customer base in the UK, this may well affect you. And if these regulations do spread in some way, then they may be coming. They may be coming for you next. The panel today consists of a mix of people. We have 3 providers of age verification technology. So this is very much a hands-on. How do I, as a service provider, implement age verification? Does it work? How much does it cost? And that kind of thing. We also have a couple of industry commentators, Vince from ASACP, Steve from .XXX, but I'm going to start with Chris Radcliffe. In fact, I'll ask you each to introduce yourselves briefly first, starting with Chris Radcliffe. Chris is head of Portland TV, runs Television X, and has been flying the flag for age verification. Was really the first British service to fully implement this, and so he has probably the most experience as a service provider of what this entails. So if you could maybe start with Chris, and then along the panel, if you could introduce yourselves briefly.
So I'm Chris Radcliffe. I'm the Managing Director of adult broadcaster Portland TV. We operate TV channels under the brands Television X and Red Hot TV in the UK market. We've been established nearly 20 years now. I'm also chair of the Adult Provider Network. Some of you will have heard me speak this morning. That's a coalition of UK-based services who are wrestling with the whole notion of age verification.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Steve Wynyard, sounding rather hoarse because this is what this damned industry does to you if you have to go out and drink every night. I'm a director and vice president of ICM Registry. We're the owners and operators of the top-level domain .XXX, and also next year we'll be launching 3 new ones, .porn, .adult and .sex. So I guess my contribution to this panel is I have a quite unique perspective, in as much that I deal with people in the adult industry across the entire world, and as a registry we've dealt very heavily with ICANN and therefore regulators that have impact from governments to the Department of Justice to the FBI to Interpol, so we kind of get a different flavour on the areas of concern that are out there that do affect everybody in this industry.
Hey everybody, I'm Raz. I am the CEO and founder of VeriDu. We do age verification based primarily on people's online footprints. And the problem that we try to solve is quite relevant here. We try to make very low cost verifications for age and other attributes available so that you don't kill your business by being forced to do these checks.
Hi, I'm Michael Post. I'm from I-ID. We're a supplier to many pre-regulated industries, gambling, finance, weapons supply, all sorts of things of this nature where they have requirements to age or identity verify, and we're a global provider of these services. So as your industry moves towards regulation, if that is indeed the way it goes, as many feel, we're a solution that's able to offer something that is pre-approved by the government, we already know is compliant, and we do that in a number of countries around the world.
Hi, Vince Charlton. I'm the European Director of ASACP, which is the Association of Sites Advocating Child Protection. Since 1996, we've been involved in all aspects of child protection, both in child sexual abuse issues and also in the protecting children from accessing inappropriate material.
I can translate if anybody has trouble with his accent.
He's hoarse, I've got the Geordie accent. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Rob Johnson. I have a telecommunications background. I am the chairman of Telecom 2, and I'm here because we have a product called VeriMe, which uses mobile as a form of age verification.
Okay, thanks. So we'll go through the presentations I'm trying to formulate some kind of logical order for these, but we'll start with Chris Radcliffe, who's the head of Portland TV.
I want to begin by just looking at where this requirement for age verification comes from. APOD, it's a name that keeps popping up, the Authority for Television on Demand. Established in 2010 as the independent co-regulator for UK-based video on demand services. So let's look at their rules and guidance. It's Rule 11 that's particularly pertinent. It relates to harmful material and specifically to the protection of under 18s. I'll tell you what it actually states, that material which might seriously impair the physical, mental, or moral development of persons under the age of 18 must be made available in a manner which secures that such persons will not normally see or hear it. AVOD's interpretation is that hardcore porn falls into the category of material which might seriously impair. It follows, therefore, that hardcore porn must be placed behind access control. And that generally entails verifying that the user is 18 plus at the point of registration. AVOD doesn't really offer much details on the technical tools that can be used for verification. It's not prescriptive in that sense. It tells us that credit cards are okay. It tells us to use reputable identity management solutions that depend on reliable and independent databases. So what we're seeing is that we're generally transposing solutions that have been designed for the gambling industry, which was forced to address this issue over a decade ago. So these include checks against the electoral roll, against credit reference data, or identity documents like passports or driving licenses. But verification costs remain high, match rates are low, and these systems are all way too intrusive in terms of the sensitive personal data that they're asking you to impart. The challenge then is to deliver low-cost, easy-to-implement solutions that ease the onboarding process with a lighter-touch approach to verification. Rule 11 does not ask us to identify our customers, simply to verify they are over 18. So I think we can adopt here a slightly different approach to the gambling industry. We don't have those anti-money laundering concerns that the gambling industry has. We also need to look at federating our data. There's no point in someone paying to verify a customer tomorrow that I have verified today. Now, if you're sat there thinking, none of this applies to me, I don't believe that hardcore porn damages children, I'm not even UK-based, news is there's new porn laws on the way. The AVMS regulations 2014 are coming in November. They will remove any ambiguity about what is meant by material that might seriously impair minors. The new regulations will stipulate that R18, or material that will be classified R18 if passed before the film board, so that means hardcore, needs to be placed behind access control. There'll also be a new prohibition on material which, if put before the film board and refused, will not be allowed. So material that is unclassifiable will no longer be legal on VOD services in the UK market. That's irrespective of whether they are adult or not. This is going to create problems for producers and site providers who are working at the extremes, particularly if you're dealing in BDSM. On top of this, the UK payments industry is looking at the legal basis on which it could restrict payments to offshore websites that are not compliant with UK regulation. This is an initiative backed by Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and the UK Cards Association. And don't expect any let-up under a Labour government. Shadow Culture Minister Helen Goodman tabled a proposal in the Commons for the UK licensing of offshore websites. Labour's Baroness Thornton picked this up in the Lords. It's been kicked into touch for the minute, but don't expect it to go away. Look at the Gambling Act 2014. Look at what the EU is doing with VAT. We're seeing a focus shifting toward point of consumption, away from establishment, away from editorial control. This could well happen with the adult business. If you want to trade here, you may end up having to be licensed here and regulated here. That makes this debate very timely and relevant to anyone who is involved with the provision of VOD services to the UK market, wherever you're based. Thank you.
Some interesting and maybe some scary stuff there. We'll leave the bulk of the scary stuff, as I said, to the censorship session tomorrow afternoon. I'd like to now introduce the three technology providers who are working with age verification. So I'll start with you, Rob. So this is Rob Johnson from Telecom 2 talking about their VeriMe product. And if we could, Mr. AV Man, switch to the laptop, please.
Introducing VeriMe, a new and cost-effective approach to age verification. Unlike most other AV solutions, there are no cumbersome forms, no documents are required, and the minimum amount of personal details are divulged. All your customers need is their mobile phone, and verification can take just moments. It's simple and robust and means you can take debit card payments with confidence. The VeriMe API is designed to integrate seamlessly with your website as part of your payment gateway. If you identify it as a credit card, the transaction continues as normal. If, however, you identify it as a debit card, you ask the customer for their UK mobile phone number. Once the customer has input a mobile number, you send it to VeriMe's API and he is invited to either send a text message or reply to a SMS message we have sent to his phone. These are both at normal network rate. Verification is complete and the customer can continue to the content. You can now take the payment, confident in the knowledge that the customer is age verified. That, in a nutshell, is how VeriMe works. For the content provider, it's an innovative new approach to AV that offers peace of mind, a full audit trail, all at a fraction of the cost of existing solutions.
Okay, I'm going to try do something now that everyone tells you shouldn't do, which is a live demo. So basically, people split their websites into two content areas, the free side and the pay-for side. So we'll use our imagination here. The person has surfed through the free side and decided to make a purchase. So they click on their button. And nothing happens. Oh no, here we go. So they come through to the payment page. They fill in their details, which we've pre-populated. They add their CV2 number, which you can't pre-populate, and they submit payment. Lo and behold, they've submitted a debit card instead of a credit card. If it had been a credit card, they would have gone straight through because you need to be 18 to have a credit card, whereas you can get a debit card, I think, from the age of 12. So we pop this box. I am in the United Kingdom. I have an age-verified UK mobile phone. I will try a different card. I am not over 18. So we'll check that. I've now got to cheat a little because I've got a Vodafone phone and I couldn't get Vodafone reception here, so I've borrowed someone else's phone. So bear with me just a second. So I will enter that phone number, I will repeat it, and I will press the button verify. Now I have to hope that the mobile networks do what they require them to do. So I have received a text. That text says, Telecom 2 is requiring age verification. Reply to this message with the text verify to continue. And then there's a help number. So I will reply with the word verify. This is, in the meantime, polling the API on our website, pending the information back. Thank you, your mobile phone has been age verified. Please click below to process the payment. So at this point, you would take the debit card payment, let the consumer through the paywall and onto the content. If that SIM had not been age verified, then this would have come up with a message saying, sorry, we've been unable to age verify you, and we would have sent a SMS back to the consumer's phone telling them what network, dependent on network, how to get in touch with that network in order to age verify. And payment complete and a reference number which we generate. And then on the back end, as you as a merchant, you will see, you will have this in the back, and you will have each individual transaction that's appeared here and whether it was age verified or not. This is time and date stamped, so it is auditable. The advantage of this is that it's a fairly lightweight age verification process. There's some other guys here who've got the traditional Experian style process involving photo ID. This VeriMe could be used in three ways. It could be integrated with these guys as part of their payment suite. It could be straight to the website, or we could provide the credit card clearance and debit card clearance in association with this. It's fairly simple, fairly robust. We've presented this to the ACTVOD Board of Determination. They do not accredit systems or software, but it was very well received. What they like is the fact that it can be independently audited around us. Obviously, we provide these date stamps, but if there was a question about a child accessing, having used this sort of system, they can separately go to the mobile networks and ask them, did this transaction, did they send the word verify on that date, and get that information and cross-check it against ours. Thank you, Jerry. 1 minute. Finished. Thank you.
I have a question.
I think questions at the end, are they?
Yeah, we'll leave questions to the end if you don't mind. So yeah, write it on your little pad, please, and don't forget it, as I tend to do after a heavy night, and I saw you quite late last night as well.
If you want a closer look at this, I'll be available after.
I would like to challenge.
I'd like to now welcome the speaker from VeriDu, who, again, you'll see have a very different approach to age verification.
Hey guys, so I'm Raz, if you didn't hear before. I've put this in front of you, and I'm going to use that a little bit to speak to you now. And I'm also going to use the website so you can see how it looks. Right, so we've been building this project. Chris and I have been talking a lot about how to solve some of your problems. So I come from a country where we have a national ID, and all the whole gambling industry was forced to use that national ID. Cost them about 15p to use it every time, and they were up in arms. They hated it, and they were fighting it the whole way. But afterwards, I've been talking to a lot of these gambling companies, and now they love it because they basically know that the user can identify really easily. It's not that expensive, and suddenly they all look like spick and span businesses. They love it, and the gamblers love it as well because they can pull out this little keychain and use it. So I'm neutral, and in my heart, I'm very liberal. I don't like legislation of this type, but at the same time, I hate the thought of my 6-year-old daughter, 7-year-old daughter, stumbling on something that she shouldn't see, because that's not a good idea. 17-year-old, probably a different matter, but in some situations, it's really a good idea to verify people, the kids' ages. So one of your problems, if and when this legislation comes down, your margins might be low, so low that some of the costs that are associated with identity checks now will actually be prohibitively expensive. So we kind of set out with Chris. Let me do this right. So we set out to build something that would actually make sense to you guys. So first of all, what we thought, what if you guys all shared your verifications? There's no reason to verify the same person over and over again and pay money for that. So if you look at this, the first step is free. Any site that wants to participate in this program and share their user base will be able to access everybody else's verified users and be able to H-verify them. So everybody using these sites will, if they've already done something, then you might as well just let them in. So that's step one. If we don't have the user, then our core technology is to verify users used on their online footprint. So it's a tokenized system where you would basically have a button that says H-verify anonymously. They would be sent to our site. We would ask them to, for example, log in with some of their social networks, do stuff like that, and then we have artificial intelligence that then looks at all that data and can determine the age very accurately. So we're working with AdRod to come up with some thresholds for that to be allowed. The cost of that is going to be less than 10p. If that doesn't work, or if the user doesn't want to participate, we'll do Rob's process. And if that doesn't work, we'll do the normal checks against credit rating agencies. And the compound cost of that is going to be significantly lower than what you're experiencing now if you're doing it at all. So we've been trying to live up to what Chris just said. Low cost, easy to implement, and ease the onboarding. Clicking these buttons and getting the results is going to take a few seconds. Basically, it's a real-time process. It's not really a problem, and we try to address the awkwardness by sending people off-site, like in a payment, a payment gateway. So that's basically us. What we do. Okay.
Okay, we can definitely switch back now. Thank you. And now, finally, the third technology provider, I'd like to introduce Intelligent ID to explain briefly their approach to age verification.
Hello again, I'm Mike from I-ID, and I guess in this room we're the sort of existing age verification solution provider. So we're the traditional way of verifying a person's identity or age or OFAC sanction status or lots of other things. So we're a hub which operates as a data supplier from lots of different providers from all over the world. We aggregate that data so we can take in data from newer feeds such as social media and from countries that have poorer data quality, and we can scrub that. But we also provide the traditional credit reference agencies and utility bill lists and all of these sort of things. And the advantage of that is that these are already accepted in regulated industries now. So the next general election comes up next year, this becomes a battleground issue, and all of a sudden lines are drawn, and I think everyone recognizes that the ISP measures that have been put in have failed, and the government decides to regulate. We're the incumbents. We're the ones that are able to provide something that the government's already comfortable with. They're already integrated into their Verify YouGov federated ID, and we can offer some of the advantages of these guys as well as a hub, because we can pull in, where your customers are comfortable with it, other feeds as well. And I think that's a real important point, though, because obviously what you're providing is a service which is usually best when it's provided discreetly. And our services are hitting data lists that people already belong to. They're not asking for additional information about them, not asking them to sign up to anything else. They're simply pulling together utility bills, electoral rolls, basic information about people that exists in the public domain, and then being able to age verify or identify or so on in the back of that. So we think that creates a lighter, more comfortable touch in certain ways. But equally, there's a lot of new innovation in the market these days. So going with the sort of hub provider allows you to leverage that on sites maybe where it's a little bit less sensitive, and then fall back to more discrete services where the site perhaps warrants it. So that's our offering. Thank you.
Thanks. And now the last two speakers are industry commentators who can take a broader view at the problems that age verification are trying to address and the problems associated with age verification as well. I'd like to next introduce Vince from ASACP, followed by Steve from ICM.
Steve's already mentioned, I apologise for the accent, but I'll try to speak English. My kids make a big issue of the fact that I'm a technical midget. Listening to these guys, it just goes beyond me, the technology. What I can speak from is a moral standpoint. Erasmus said before, and I agree wholeheartedly, that the issue is not 15, 16, 17-year-olds who are using proxies to watch porn. I have a 17-year-old son. If he wasn't searching out porn, I'd be more concerned. The main issue is obviously that of 6, 7-year-old children who are inadvertently stumbling across hardcore pornography. I think sometimes it is overexpressed that you're only 2 clicks away from watching hardcore pornography, but you know you know the feeling there. It is too easily accessible for young children. So from a moral standpoint, ASACP, we always take the view that it should be down to the parents to bring up their children. There are plenty of filters out there. We operate something called a restricted to adults label, which is a meta tag which can be put onto adult sites, and it stops it being picked up by search engines. But that's an old argument. It's obvious from listening to the guys here that things certainly in the UK have moved on from just let the parents get on with it. Whilst it's still very, very important for parents to take responsibility for their children's upbringing, the figures for the take-up of the ISP filtering show that, for whatever reason, it's not working. Age verification, I hate the idea of government intervention. I hate the idea of any form of censorship. But it's obvious something has got to give, and I think the industry has got to comply sooner or later down the line. There's got to be a level playing field. I understand the UK's anger, the UK industry anger, that we're talking about VAT harmonisation here. There's got to be some sort of harmony where companies from outside of the UK are playing on a level playing field as companies who are within the UK. It's the point of consumption. Anything that protects children, we believe has merit and deserve to be looked at. And I've got no issue at all with supporting, in general, the concepts mooted around here today. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my perspective, as I said when I started, I see and have got to know companies that are involved in adult all over the world, from the small guys to the very, very big ones. And I've been exposed, whilst getting to know all of these different people, to a lot of the challenges that they face on a daily basis, including the pressure that we get as a registry for things we're supposed to be looking to do, to help cure whatever problems are out there. I guess my take on this isn't the first challenge to face the online adult industry, but in my opinion, this is probably the best challenge to tackle. It doesn't matter what your view is on the morality sides. Whenever you involve conversations to do with kids accessing pornography, you'll always get a reaction. And whether you read that lot of data or this lot of data that say it's good or it's bad or it's perfect, I mean, fuck, I had a lawyer, one of our industry's best lawyers, turn around to me in Arizona 18 months ago. I will never mention his name. And he said to me, you know what, Steve, all this age verification stuff is bullshit. He said, there's nothing wrong with a 13-year-old learning how to give blowjobs. Now, when you've got that kind of opinion and you then get everybody else saying, oh, it should be 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, whatever it is, it's all pretty irrelevant. Kids see pornography and just shouldn't, and it's a volcano of pressure that you guys actually should be, you have no choice but to deal with the way the world is now, but actually you're going to be in a commercial advantage above others. I know of many, many other countries across the world and many other governments that have so much pain, and they want to try and cure this, from Iceland to Canada to Australia to many other European countries. And Chris and Vince are aware of a lot of things, even from the European directive. The pressure is huge, guys. It's not just the United Kingdom. You guys just happen to be second. Germany was first. The UK is second. But I remain convinced that once these new technologies become embedded and more age verification systems are put in place, the bullshit parts of the industry that are about traffic, that have so many kids involved, will actually mean you'll get less traffic, but it'll be better qualified people. They'll convert more, you'll get more money, it'll cost less in bandwidth, and I think it'll be a better, cleaner industry. So we get very heavily involved from our TLDs as to, well, what can we do about it? You know, how can we contribute? We are working on projects and big commercial solutions that we hope will eventually get to a stage where we can provide something that the whole industry can use, where you don't directly pay for any age verification, and there is a process where people go through that consume pornography perfectly safely and perfectly sensibly. So there's actually an awful lot of work being done behind the scenes by a lot of top companies and top people to try and take on this problem, and also to fight against the governments. I still believe that some of the politicians out there are looking for their knighthood. And whenever they use the words kids and porn, you know, you can't not pay attention. It's, you know, it is the subject to listen to. But I still, you know, I've met them all. I think a lot of them are on a bit of a personal mission. So, you know, rest assured you've got some pretty big players all over the world that are battling on behalf of the industry to try and put forwards our opinions, our thoughts, our rights, and collectively do this as well as we can to get a level playing field. But I guess my rap would be, get on with it, you have no choice. It might cause you a bit of pain, but you'll be in a better place than other companies across the world when they have to sit in front of panelists like us and go, oh, look, we're having to do this, and they go through this in a year or 2 years or 3 years' time. So, you know, it's a problem, but take advantage of it, because I actually think it's the right thing, and I think it'll benefit this industry. And that's it.
Thanks, Steve. I'll make a couple of kind of quick points first. Chris mentioned Rule 11 is based on EU laws that say that they don't refer to porn, they refer to content that might seriously impair children. The content regulator Ofcom has did a study into whether adult content, hardcore porn, might seriously impair children if they see it, and the conclusion that their psychologists came to was, no, there's no evidence it might. Ofcom then decided that, yeah, but we're better restrict it just in case. They also published a review of studies in 20 other...
What relevance is this?
Jerry,
That's pointless. I'm sorry.
I made a point, Jerry, that there is a law that is drafted, that is lodged with the European Commission right now, that will come into law. But irrespective of what Ofcom's position was, what the research showed, we will have a new law that clearly states that in the UK, hardcore requires to go behind access control.
Okay, so yeah, I was just coming to that point. So
that's an argument that's a year old, Jerry.
No, I'm pointing out that the might seriously impair. That the Ofcom themselves say that our product, the product that you sell...
But the opinion of a result is irrelevant to this entire debate.
And the government has always advised Ofcom to take a precautionary approach and has now set that down in a new law.
Sure. So to summarise what you said, the Ofcom has come to the conclusion that content probably doesn't seriously impair children, but they're now putting into law... they're now removing that aspect from the law, so that they're outlawing hardcore porn and removing the might seriously impair part from the equation.
They're not outlawing anything.
Okay,
they're simply placing it behind access control.
And
besides, the regulators do not make the laws; it's the policymakers.
I was trying to provide a very small piece of information to the audience, which is that there's no evidence found, including by Ofcom, that porn might...
Jerry, I'm sorry. With respect, I don't think anybody here cares about that opinion.
Okay, I'll move on. And we'll cover this subject, as I say, more in tomorrow afternoon session. On the technology, I just wanted to quickly note, obviously, I'm not going to pick a technology winner or a favourite of the three here. I would say, though, that your free drinks tonight are being paid for by VeriMe, so, you know, you probably shouldn't take...
You're welcome.
You probably shouldn't choose an age verification provider based on who's paying for your drinks, but I thought I should mention it. Okay, first of all, are there any questions from the floor? You spoke earlier.
I was wondering, because of gathering that much personalized data, who's gonna regulate and control you as a company? Because you have mobile numbers, you have age verification by birth date, you have credit card, financial statements. Basically, you are a very popular target for identity theft.
Okay, so the question is really to the technology providers. What kind of personal data are you taking, and what kind of responsibility does that give you? We'll do them in. Start with Rob.
That's me.
We are, that data is held by the mobile network. We are simply being passed through a process called SS7. We get a flag which says whether the person has age verified when they've registered SIM or subsequently to that. So we're taking it from a pool which is held by the mobile networks. We're not holding anything other than that. There is no, that example there, the names, the addresses, that's the website owner's responsibility. So from our perspective, we're just simply passing through data from the mobile network.
So you're not making a copy, basically you're using the EU regulation American Data, just passing through as a window.
Yes.
Yeah. We won't have a lot of time to discuss these in detail, but let's get each vendor's response. VeriDu's response.
I think it's actually a really good question, because we're seeing now Walmart was hacked, and PlayStation was hacked a couple of years ago, and we all use the same password and usernames everywhere. Right. All right, it's Target, yeah. So the whole idea of individual vendors holding this information is the biggest security flaw that we can think of, because all of us will not be able to protect the user's data in the right way. So what we're trying to do is be a company that actually does that really well. And ultimately what we want to do is to give the user the ultimate control of that profile, so they can actually go in and say, no, I don't want these people to have access to my data anymore, and I want to delete my profile. And so about access to that information, who has that? Well, of course we do, but we have all the encryption and all that stuff going on. And what I think is a big problem in all of this is actually that identifying yourself has no authentication step involved. So when I enter my form data and I submit it against a credit rating agency, that, who knows that it's me submitting it? And so what we're trying to do is actually put in some sort of like soft authentication in every step, because or else it's just circus and there's no reason. So my biggest point in all of this is like, if we're going to do it, let's do it right, because there's no reason to spend money on something that's just circus. So yeah, that answers your question a little bit at least.
How I see it in the net and based on the net.
So we've only got a few minutes left of the session, so we're really going to have let I'd like Intelligent ID to answer that, and perhaps you could discuss it in detail with them afterwards.
I think these guys have done a good job, but I think part of your question was around what regulations this falls under. It's data protection, same as any of the stuff that you collect now about the individual. And we're governed by that, and because the legislation and regulation around gambling and finance and so on is set, and the path that we verify through is set, there are existing pathways for people to remove their data, protect themselves, be secure, so on. So I think that's where it falls, in my opinion.
I'd just like to throw in another little question. I think a couple of speakers mentioned, I'd hate to have my child access porn. I've got an 18-month-old, and I intend pretty much that for as long as I have control over his internet access, which is maybe as long as another decade, I'll be controlling what he has to view. But isn't that problem already solved? Didn't ASACP already solve this problem, or provide part of the solution with RTA label combined with client-side filtering and so on? Don't parents already have the tools to do that?
RTA labeling only works if a parent uses filtering. And yes, if every website was on there and had RTA, then it would stop access to the sites. But I think when we look at the take-up, with the ISP filters, it's fairly obvious that there is something fundamentally wrong in either the sales pitch that the ISPs are putting across to families. You had to wait, I had a sweet in my mouth, didn't you? So there is a problem in either the pitch that's going out to the parents, or is there a problem with, just a cultural angle in this country where families just couldn't give a toss what their kids are watching? I'm not a psychologist, we look at it from a different angle. The tools are out there. I mean, there's always been the filters out there, the tools are out there. But it's gone beyond that argument. And ASACP, originally an American organisation where RTA is all that is required, the argument has gone way past that in the UK and Europe, and we have to be pragmatic and we have to look at what's happening in age verification, accept it and move forward with it. Stop the kids watching it.
Steve, did you want to comment on that?
No, I totally agree with Vince. I think that the industry tried its best with labelling and parental education and filtering, but I think everybody needs to realise, get over yourself, it's failed, that doesn't work. The world's changed, pornography is mainstream, parents are more complacent. My parents never spoke to me about sex the way I do with my kids. I think my kids talk about it when they're very young. So, the world has just changed and evolved. And I think what happened up until the time that the UK in particular or Germany put in age verification was, okay, well, that's the best you can do so far. But the reality is it hasn't worked, and it will continue not to work. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world not comfortable with the way the industry is presenting itself because there's so much porn being seen by kids. So, thanks for trying, but this is why we're here talking about age verification technologies, because this is potentially the next best step to try and put the problem right.
And sorry, final comment, to have RU18 on a website, pardon the French, is just a piss take. I'm sorry.
Enter, exit isn't really satisfactory.
My 13-year-old boy, are you 18? Of course he is.
Yeah.
I'll take another question here.
For the mobile verification, we'd like to know how you unlock your phone, how you allow your phone to access, what is the process, and also what the amount of, what percentage of app removed.
So the question is, how does mobile age verification work in the UK?
How do you remove
How do you verify your phone as adult?
Three ways that you verify. It's when you sign up for your contract, most of us will have had this, you have to present a photo ID, which they take a copy of and fax off to the network, and then they open it up. You can do it by sight in the store, but you've got to have some balls occasionally. Can I have a porn access in the store? You're not going to really do that in the Vodafone store, are you? But some people do, and at the example of Germany, where they have to go to the post office to register to get their ID to watch the TV, adult TV, they do it. So I think the levels, it varies quite substantially across networks. Obviously, if the network has a high percentage of contract users as opposed to pay-as-you-go users, they have higher levels. So Vodafone 3 have a fairly high level of age-verified SIMs.
What does it mean? It's 5%, 10, 50?
Oh no, I think you're talking along the lines of 40% 40 to 45% on those networks.
This system's been in place for about 10 years in the
yes.
UK, isn't it?
And you're talking 2025 on networks like O2 with a high pay-as-you-go ownership.
And it works pretty well. About a week ago, EE decided that all content on the web was adult, which caused a bit of a problem for a day or two. Could I take the question?
How much more information are customers going to have to put in? I know with the VeriMe system mobile phone, but with the other providers, I know when you look at things like Equifax, you have to put in your name, your address. If you haven't lived there for more than 3 years, you have to put in your previous residence. It's quite large. We're going to have to get all this information from our customers. I mean, if they're signing up to some of the sites that we operate gateways on, are they really going to be wanting to put their full address? And the other question is, with 3D Secure, is that not a way of verifying people to be operating?
I mean, I'll answer on the data front. So we've been operating with those traditional means. In fact, we were contracted with Intelligent ID. So the data that we were asking our customers to give over was their name, their address, and their date of birth. So we weren't going into that previous addresses, but of course there is that disconnect, of where you might be registered with your bank. So that does create problems, and that's why you end up with lower match rates. And so interesting to see the VeriDu and the VeriMe solution, mobile phone number only, social sign-in only, so they're much lighter touch.
And this is just in the UK, so if there's a similar site to mine in America, they think, this is too much hassle, all they've got to do is go to another website and they get full access.
No, we cover globally. We do everywhere.
It's a question about competition, though, isn't it? So your competitor doesn't have to do this, but you do.
Right.
I think this is a consequence of the good work that's been done over many years to bring porn into the mainstream. I think, for a long time, this wasn't an issue because it wasn't easily accessible. Not as many children went to find it. They weren't as educated. Obviously, there's been campaigns and work done for decades to improve that and get it to a state where it is now very mainstream, which is excellent. I'm a big fan of that. But as a consequence of that, it means the industry has to shift and start to protect the fringes where the children and so on are coming in. And there's always got to be leaders in that. And the UK is obviously deciding to set itself out as a leader, as it does in a lot of things with digital policy. So this is something that I agree with Chris is coming in, will happen, and there will be unintended consequences in the short term. But if you're at the forefront of that, as everybody else is running and playing catch up, you'll be ahead of the game.
To answer the question on the banks, just finally, yes, banks could be identity providers. They have a lot of information about you, probably more information than anybody else, but there is no bank that has yet come forward to be an identity provider.
Secure not mean that you've got to be over 18. Don't you have to be over 18 to have that little password at the end of the debit or credit card? I think it is. I thought to do that with MasterCard or Visa, a stipulation was you did have to be over 18.
Okay, so we're getting a bit esoteric just coming into the last minutes or so.
All the transactions we take, we make sure they're 3D secure because we don't want clawbacks. So we thought that would protect us.
I don't know if anyone can answer that briefly.
3D secure just verifies that it's the card holder. Because there is no audit trail, you can't then go back and prove that customer has verification.
Did you want to say something? We're getting aside. Sorry, we've gone down a path. Sorry, Rob, did you want to say something briefly on that point?
VeriMe is only for the UK. However, at the last GSMA meeting, I think about 3 months ago, there was an agreement to adopt the same age verification system across other territories worldwide. So in the next three years, I would think that we will start to see that we will be able to get AV mobile phone information back in other territories.
That was going to be my question. It's just
I knew that.
we're going to be verifying these customers from overseas alongside our UK customers.
Currently not, but soon.
I mean, if we have a customer from Belgium ring up and want to use our system, what do? We verify them against the English databases of phone numbers and all this.
Right, so the question is in verifying international users. VeriMe is very much a UK solution. VeriDu, you said, is global. How about Intelligent ID?
Yeah, we also have global data sets, so you'll be giving us Belgian details and we'll identify those, I think, in a similar way to VeriDu. So we'll recognize that and verify in Belgium.
It's just about time to wrap up. I'd just like to ask Chris a question about once this legislation is in the UK, so effectively anyone who isn't age verifying wherever they are in the world is in theory breaking UK law. Is that right?
No, it's the service provider that is regulated, so it's not the consumer.
Right, but if a US service provider has UK customers, then in theory they're breaking the law if they're not age verifying them.
Currently, the regulation doesn't cover offshore sites. So, until we have a licensing system for offshore sites in the UK that forces you to come under UK regulation, then, it's a bit of a free-for-all if you're offshore.
Could there be this imaginary scenario similar to the gambling problem in the US where British directors of gambling companies were extradited to Louisiana for breaking the local law? I mean, would the same apply? Could the same apply in reverse?
I think there's lessons to be learned from the gambling industry. It's 10 years since all those actions started to happen, and I don't know. I can't predict possibly what the government is going to bring into law over the course of the next Parliament. We don't know which way the government's going to go.
Okay. I'd like to very much thank the panel. This is clearly an area which is evolving week by week. So I guess keep an eye on Xbiz, keep an eye on these businesses. But yeah, I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for taking part.